good morning. Whoa, this is Coffee with Grant. I'm Grant. This is Coffee. Ruby is at home. We are at the airport. Um, okay. Omaha Airport is kind of a nightmare. One, because you can hear the ambient noise in here. This place is very poorly designed to have people in it. It's one of those. Two, there's almost no direct flights. I mean, we maybe were going up a little bit and had like a golden age where there was like two direct flights, but since prices have gone up and people are consolidating, and it's like, no, fly to our hub. So that means that all the connecting flights out of here have to connect to get somewhere else, and that means all the flights leave at the same time. So every single flight out of this terminal leaves at about 6 in the morning, which means that there's like 500 to 1,000 people who have all arrived to do different things. Um,
Whoa, Grant from the future here. Well, his future, not Greg. I'm from your past, because that's how videos work. Um, yeah, so you can tell that I am bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and that's because I've had several nights of good sleep between then. So I did want to talk about airports, and I did record some stuff in both the Omaha and the St. Louis airport, but it was the first time using this setup in the wild, and I wasn't sure how much ambient noise was coming in, and I also wasn't traveling alone, and I find it really rude to sit there, next to somebody and be like, I'm just gonna do a video recording. So I'm gonna kind of fill in the gaps about what I wanted to talk about with airports. First thing is, yes, the Omaha airport is in the process of being completely overhauled. So to their credit, they are working to make it better, right? Like there is a it's hard to it's kind of like fat shaming somebody while they're actively at the gym. It's like, they're doing the thing. They're trying, and it's the same thing. It's like I'm trying to shame the airport for how poorly designed it is while they are actively attempting to fix it is kind of disingenuous. Like I get it. It sucks the process sucks in the moment, but it's going to be better. Problem is, it's like 2 years down the road, 2 or 3 years down the road, when they're going to have a connected terminal. But who knows what the end result is? I think it'll be nice. But yeah, the Omaha airport has its flaws. All airports have flaws, which is why we're going to talk about flying.
we're in the St. Louis airport waiting to go to Orlando. Oh, turbulence. Um, okay. I am very much efficiency coded when it comes to like observing new systems, and there's nothing more frustrating than going through an airport where you can observe like a system that's broken and it could be fixed. Uh, Easiest example of this right now is the transition of Southwest to go from one free checked bag to having paid check bags. So what that's done is that everybody has decided to try to save money by not checking a bag, so they have smaller bags that they can carry on. Right, that makes sense. It's just like, oh, you're going to incentivize people to take a smaller bag and try to save money. So then we're sitting there at the gate, and Southwest says, well, this is a completely full flight, and 20 of you have to check your small bag because they're not going to fit. 20. Not like five, but they know. The thing is, they know the size of the plane, and they would assume that everybody is going to have a personal item that fits under the seat in front of them and a small bag, that every single person flying is going to have that. And what they're doing is they're gambling that people are traveling somehow without those two things. And then they're hoping that it just makes no sense. They're hoping that people pay the $50 bag fee in advance, and that any of those people that pay that, it's any people that pay that are making the company money. But then they said, oh, well, don't worry. If we have to check your bag at the gate, your fee will be covered. You can do it for free. So what they've done is they've essentially just said, oh, what we're going to do is we're going to charge people for bags, but then we know there's going to be people who have to have their bag checked. That is just how the thing is going to work. So we're going to waste time, people's time and departure, and our employees' time vetting these bags. And then we're going to cause arguments and frustrations because the people who brought their carry-on want to take them on the plane. But we knew in advance that there wouldn't be enough room if every single person did that. So it's a model that gambles that some people are going to be flying without the overhead bin usage. And I'm sure there's a percentage of people, but it just makes no sense to me. Why not just have the check bag thing be free again? If you're going to check 20 bags for free anyway, and you're going to have people do it at the gate, and you're going to split your staff time to do it, it just decisions like that make no sense.
So now that I've gotten some some time in between me, and that's, I think, the other disadvantage of going to the airport is that you will inevitably be exhausted. And it's like they're kind of banking on that. They're kind of banking that the longer you're in the system, the more tired you are, and the more less you are like you're willing to put up with more, not like in frustration wise, but you're just like, fuck it, okay, whatever, like here we go. And so yeah, somebody at Southwest decided to go, oh, if we could just be shaving another couple $1,000s off of every flight if we had people pay for check bags. And then that's going to offset this. We're going to be making just slightly much money, but if we multiply that by how many flights, it's going to be amazing. And what they're failing always with these people are failing to take into account is what is the monetary value of your reputation, right? So yes, you may be making a couple $1,000s for $50 at a time by people who paid to have their luggage checked and who knew they were traveling with a large enough bag. So essentially what you've done is you've said, oh, are you the people who don't fly regularly but are flying for a big vacation? You are the people who are now, we're going to milk for money. Because the business travelers and the people who are like do this all the time, who don't want to have their bags checked, they're going to never check a bag because they know how the system works, and they're going to be there for a day or 2 days, kind of like the business trip that I was on, right? But the reputation piece is, how much is it worth reputation wise? Because you could watch it when people who hadn't flown Southwest in a while, when they came out and said, hey, we need 20 of you to check your bags, you could just watch the energy in the terminal drop. So it's like you're just royally pissing off your customers. I was royally pissed off, and I'm sitting there like, why would it? Because now what I'm seeing is that an airline who at least was unapologetically themselves, they'd figured some shit out. They were like, oh, we're the love airline, we're goofy, we're funny, we don't take ourselves too seriously. And now we're going to try to mimic things like American Airlines and United. And having had such a bad experience with United, that immediately came back. I was just like, oh, fuck. Don't do that, Southwest. Don't be that airline. It really rubs me the wrong way. I'm going to definitely hesitate flying with Southwest in the future because of it. And so what you've done potentially is just eroded your customer base away by doing it. So just check the bags for free again. Just do it. Like, moving on to seating.
Southwest goes, and I'd have to look at how they're boarding, but they went from having no seating arrangement to assigned seating. Now, in my view, you do assigned seating, that gives you an opportunity to have people line up in order to make the boarding the most efficient. But they don't do that. They have the boarding sections, presumably, from what I can tell, it's the back of the plane gets boarded first, which makes sense. And then they go in like segments that way from back to front, which is counterintuitive because and I get it, like when you're paying more money, you want to be like, oh, I get first priority. I want to be there first. I want to do stuff first, et cetera, and so forth. But from a boarding standpoint, that makes sense. But at the same time, why does no airline do this? And I suppose I could speculate is that the terminals are not designed to have seating for every single passenger that fits on the plane. And they should. And part of it is there are different types of planes and they're different sizes, you know, like I get it. And that to have, but like, yeah, I'm just picturing this. There's enough room. It would just be very cramped. But the idea that I'm saying is like lay out exactly the seats that I'm sitting in. You know, these stupid, you know, the ones, the airport seats, these guys, the black leather with the aluminum that are in every airport. Lay those out in a diagram that mirrors the interior of the plane that you're about to get on. So that way you find your seat and you're already sitting there. And then they just say, get on the plane. The back gets to board first and you just get up in order and you get out. And what that would do is that everybody would, even if you really wanted to do it right, then you would have, you know, all your rows lined up. Okay, you got your front, you got your back, and you would have all the outside people go first. So from the back to the front, outside first, all your window seat people, the assigned seating, and you would peel them off, and they would go in first, and they would go back. And I feel like you do that every other row, so that the people aren't. So you do outside every other row first. Those people go. Then you do the window seats every other row first. Those people go, and then after they go, you start doing middle seats every other row, all the way down, and finally you do the aisle seat every other row all the way down until you board the plane. Or you just do it in order because that makes sense to people, and they go, "We're at the back, and we're therefore going to go all the way to the back." You know, put our stuff in the overhead bins, slide it in real quick. And everybody behind them, yeah, there might be a little bit of a delay while people get situated, but they're going to be able to stow their bags and do that really quickly. Because like boarding and unboarding is one of those interesting conundrums, right? Where it could be done more efficiently than it is, but then it's also like, oh, well, we have things like priority boarding, people with families, people with wheelchair access, people who, and does it make sense to do those at the end and get people situated, or do that at the beginning? I would love to like hypothetically design an airline from the ground up and be like, okay, if I was going to do everything different, cost be damned, you know, what would I do? And then work out how to make it profitable on the back end. It would be one, reward people for knowing the system. So like if you fly a lot, if you are prepared, if you understand the regulations, if you have a bag that is the right size, if you, I mean, like they were literally sitting there at the gate going like, all right, you guys, we're gonna get you to St. Louis. However, you have to have two bags. That's one like small thing that fits in the overhead bin and another personal item that can go into the seat. That's two. So when we're adding them up, you have one of them, and you have one of the other ones, and that totals two. Not three, but two. We can all count to two. We should all. And then they were like really hammering it home to the point where I was kind of like, I get it. But, and then I still was seeing people who were like standing there listening to this, and they'd get to the gate and they'd be like, you have three things. Like, we have to check one of them. And they're like, what? No one told me. And so, like, I get it. Like, the employees are dealing with a group of people who are just not listening, not paying attention, not wanting to be invested, and not like, you know, they're just like they're going off of previous assumptions about what they are going to experience, and then what that's doing is that's going to set people up for you're going to set yourself up for failure in that people's expectations are constantly going to be disrupted, and everybody's going to be angry because they didn't expect that they couldn't take their fanny pack in their purse and their bag, or that their bag is, you know, their bag is super packed full because they crammed everything they needed a vacation into the small bag, so they didn't have to check it and pay the extra $50, et cetera and so forth, only to have been told that bag needs to be checked anyway, which I guess is cool, but then you have the hassle of picking it up again, which doesn't make any sense. Yeah, there's so many different things. I'd say one, reward people for flying regularly. So it'd be like have a like, oh, a you know what the hell you're doing flight. So if you fly more than like 5 or 6 times a year, you could be access to the flight where it's like this is all people who know what the hell they're doing. They're all going to have their ducks in a row, et cetera, and so forth. There are no small children. Families are not allowed to fly on the you know what you're doing flight. It is people who know what they're doing. Like you have to be pre TSA pre-checked to even get access to it. It's like we're not fucking around. We're going to do this, and it's going to run smoothly because people understand the system. Um, oh, I would totally, yeah. I would go out of my way to fly on a flight like that if that was an option. Especially because, like, right now, looking around, there's majority of people seem to be either independent or couples traveling. Very, very rare. I would say less than 5% of people sitting over here are, and that I've seen, are families traveling with little kids. That's a whole thing. There aren't really a good airline that caters towards traveling with little kids. And the thing is, if you're traveling with a little kid, you probably haven't traveled all that much, right? You try to limit the trips. The trips are few and far between. And so in doing so, you basically don't know. You're learning things in the moment. And, you know, you're a parent and you're also tired and you had to get your kids up at like 3 in the morning to get them to the airport. Like none of that is good. So I would have the layout of the plane be in the terminal somehow. Whether that is literally you stand on your spot, like there's dots on the floor and you just find your spot on the floor and you stand there and we're like, here we go, which is kind of what Southwest does, but they can't get everybody standing in the same place. Or it's like you just find your chair and you wait there, and then when it's ready to go, they just do. My third one, and this is like my like pipe dream goal would be a like C-130 where the nose opens up. And what they do is they just slide like you have little like cartridges almost. So everybody's already seated in the airport, and the plane opens its nose up, comes up to the terminal, and then like the existing passengers cartridge slides out, and it like and they're all seated. They don't even get up from the flight. You know, like all their luggage and everything is. It just slides out, and then it just like moves over, and then the other cartridge moves in, and it goes into the plane, and they shut it, and they just leave. And that way, then you never like, and all your luggage would be on that cartridge underneath you or whatever. You just put it in there, and it'd pop back up, or you'd stick it in the side or something before you climb up into your seat, and then it would do. You know, there's a bunch of different ways you could do it. But I like that where it's like, hey, just hang like a roller coaster or like an amusement park ride. It's like, no, we're not going to have people get up and leave the plane. We're going to have you get on this thing and we're going to load it into the plane and lock it in and we're all set. And that would allow them to clean and modernize the inside of the planes without having to completely change like the engine and the fuselage and everything that way. So arguably, though, would I want to get into a plane where the front opens up? You know what? It is what it is. Like, I think that would be more efficient. But like, yeah, there's so much communication. I see, like, one of the biggest advantages I would see as an airline is saying like, oh, we know when things are going to happen in advance. We're trying to prevent things from happening. So the question then becomes why, if they like this example with Southwest, why if they know they have a certain amount of seats, they have a certain amount of space for bags, and if every single person brings a bag for the overhead bin, they will be 20 or 30 short. If they know that, then why not take steps to mitigate that?
Okay, yeah. So the answer to this occurred to me later. It's so frustratingly simple, and the answer is that the airlines always know how many people they have on the plane, sometimes months in advance. Very rarely are people booking flights like the night of. Most of the time, because of the way the airline system works, you book tickets far, far in advance. So if you do the assumption and you assume that every single person, you can ask people when they book their tickets if what they're bringing, be like, are you going to bring a backpack, a purse, a carry-on that's going to need the overhead bin? Are you going to need that? And then you hold people to it. They're like, well, I wasn't planning on it, blah, blah, blah. But you could say, oh, well, when you do this, just let us know. It doesn't cost you anything else. Just let us know what you're bringing on the plane. And that way, in the background, there's a counter that ticks up. And when they hit the total number of overhead bin spots, they just go, sorry, hey, you booked your ticket last or late, and therefore you aren't going to have any overhead bin spots. So if you bring a bag, we will check it for you. Um, if you'd rather not go through the whole check bag thing, let us know at the gate and we will do it. So then it completely flips this. It flips people, and then you give them like a drink coupon or something for their inconvenience. Be like, hey, we I get that you didn't want to, but here's the interesting part of this, and this is the thing that I think people didn't realize, is that if they check your bag at the plane, they can pull it out at the plane. They don't throw it onto the baggage claim and you have to go down and get it. Because they're two different, like, the checked luggage that's checked before you get on the plane has to always be segregated from the passengers. But the ones that went through security already, you can give those back to people. And that's what was happening. So I also think that people weren't understanding what that was. So the idea being, people thought, and I thought this, that you would have to go back through the whole system, go wait at the baggage claim terminal, stand there while the thing fires up and find your bag as it goes around, and, burn through 40 or 50 minutes, when in reality what they were doing is they were opening up a little thing right in the crew area, throwing this bag down into the cargo area, and then when they landed, they just pulled them all back out and they had them sitting right there. So if you knew this was happening in advance, you just communicate with people, and that way the people who are like, oh, hey, I was told that I would get a free drink coupon if I gave you this here, and then the staff has all this time to round these bags up and get them labeled before the flight takes off, because there's hours of getting ready, etc. That's the answer to this right there, is like, you have it's assuming Southwest somehow, and all these airlines somehow assume that they're just like, man, we can't possibly predict who's going to be on this plane at any moment. I'm like, I guarantee you had your flight manifest completely. I'd be very interested to look at the numbers and see like when a flight is booked and basically how many changes actually get made between when the flight gets completely full and when it takes off. And I bet you that gap is like a week or 2 weeks or more. I would bet, unless it's like last minute business travel, etc., I would bet that those, and of course then, if you were going, oh, well, wow, that flight is completely full, we should have another flight that's similar. Like, it should immediately open another flight up. The whole back end of how they manage that, like 90% of what they could do to avoid these things is just being very smart in the setup of the ticketing and the setup and the vetting of your customer. And then also going, hey, here's a little quiz. Have you not flown before? Here's all the stuff that we want you to do, and you have to check off. People still wouldn't read it, but it would, anything you can do to incentivize people to educate themselves would help. I chatted a lot more about all sorts of other stuff, but I was really having trouble maintaining a through line because my brain was melting out of my ears, and I'd already been up for like 6 or 7 hours at that point. And if there's one thing of like being up, like, oh, you've been up for 8 hours. No, it's getting up at 3 in the morning and not having a good night's sleep and running solely off of caffeine, and it's not a good environment for trying to pull arguments out of thin air and make them articulate with no editing, clearly, because we're editing it and I didn't want to show it in its entirety. But yeah, like little stuff like that could have fixed it. And I'm thinking, like, if I haven't flown in a while, you know what I would love to do? And I don't know if it would work. I don't know if there's like a touchscreen kiosk or something that you could implement, but do something that's behind security where if you haven't flown in a while, it will check in. Like, presumably the system knows when the last time you went through TSA was, right? You have to show your ID. It's logged somewhere. That's in the system. So presumably you could either scan your boarding pass or your ID. Imagine like a kiosk, right? Touch screen, whole thing. And then it quizzes you on all the changes and updates that have been made and does a little refresher on regulations and how stuff works on everything that's been changed, and then you get like a little checkbox sign off thing that says, "Oh, well, thank you so much for being an informed commuter, and because of that, we've given you X amount of points." And I'm not talking like airline credit card points because that's a whole different racket. But like something that you're gamifying and incentivizing to for people to be basically you're gamifying etiquette for the airport and for traveling, which I think could be a really interesting mechanic if you did it right. Arguably, there are always going to be some people who go out of their way to try to be the most informed, to try to have their stuff taken care of, to do that. Like, I again, it'd be a very interesting thought experiment to design an airport from the ground up, to like reverse engineer it and say, because at certain things like this whole thing with Southwest and how they're doing their ticketing and how they're doing their bags, the airport has no say in that. The airport is a space that Southwest is renting for access to their terminals. So, if you're like, oh, Southwest is always at Terminal B or, wherever in your local airport they happen to be, they're paying that airport to rent the space. So, they pay to have their planes there on the ground, they pay to have them refueled, but they pay to have access to that space. And bigger hubs, like think about Delta with owning most of Atlanta airport, they can really dominate the scene and they have more rooms for their planes and less room for other people's planes, and it's a whole deal. But what you can actually control in the airport is all of the amenities and the process going around it. And of course, then the TSA is its own thing. So the airport doesn't control the TSA. The TSA, this is kind of interesting too. The TSA doesn't, from what I understand, doesn't rent any space from the airport. They just go, you have to have TSA space. And the airport says, yeah, set it up over there. And then the TSA comes in with their own stuff and they set up in whatever space that you give them as the airport, and they kind of operate independently. So even if you're part of the airport and you say, hey, we need to make this more efficient, you're up to negotiating with whoever the local TSA person is who's responsible. So you've got these three entities: the airport building itself, and the airport building itself is what manages which restaurants show up, what amenities are present, whether or not there's a Hudson News or a Starbucks or whatever, including how clean the bathrooms are, whether or not you have drinking fountains, space, etc., and so forth. And then they also get rent from the airlines, but the TSA then has to security. Getting through security, I think, is a big time suck because people aren't informed. They don't know what to do. They're constantly, discombobulated and recombobulated, etc. And it makes you wonder how thorough security actually is. Here we are 25 years after 9/11. There are some things that I've accidentally gotten through security where I got to the end and I went, I shouldn't have this on a plane. I forgot to take it out of my bag and just no one noticed. So yeah, but it's this collaboration between three entities that don't necessarily want to work with each other or don't care. And the airline passenger is at the mercy of all three of them, but has no agency really to deal with. Like, if you're having a bad time with TSA, like when I missed my flight to New York, it was because the TSA had been slow, but my flight didn't give a shit. Like, the airline that I was flying on didn't care because that wasn't their thing. They were like, I don't know what to tell you, but that's not our... And there was really nobody to complain to because the TSA was like, it's not our job to get you on your plane. It's our job is to really, really thoroughly search you. And yeah, it could be done so much better. So if you're reverse engineering, like, oh, what would you sell in an airport? Because shit that you see at the airport for sale is always crap that you don't need. Or it's stuff that you do need, and you're like, there's no reason I'm going to pay $6 for 2 Tylenol in a little blister pack. But they go, ha, 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 but you are inconvenienced. You are inconvenienced, and therefore you have greater demand, and the free market would dictate that I can bend you over a barrel. And there's no reason you need to do that to people, right? I think my incentive would be to sell things that people need, like reusable water bottles, pillows, Like stuff you could use on your flight. So it'd be like charging stuff you might have forgotten, charging cables, um, basic pharmaceutical supplies, stuff for uh, stuff for anti-diarrheal things, things that you don't want to experience on a plane, motion sickness, pain meds, etc. Like have those available, over the counter meds. Have them be the same price as they are outside of the airport. What an amazing idea. Like, wow. Or even cheaper because, they are individual like servings, individual like things. You don't even like, and some of these have like pay what you want. Um, Not pay what you want. That would be great. Yeah, I just paid what I want, which was nothing. No, it's like self checkout is what the word I'm looking for. Some of these have self checkout stuff where there's like one plainclothes employee just meandering around to make sure you don't pocket stuff, but for the rest of it, they realize that most people will be able to ring themselves out and it's fine. Um, sure, I guess whether or not there's a cashier who has to be there all the time, or it's self checkout, or you do a little mix of both, who cares? Um, Whatever system works. But what I'm saying is like less touristy crap. Like I get it and I understand the idea of going, oh shit, okay, I've landed in Omaha and like this just happened because I when we flew out of Omaha it was 72 degrees out, and then we landed in Orlando and it was 85 degrees for the 2 days that we were there, and I felt really good about my packing and wardrobe choices, and then we flew back and it was 20 below zero, wind chill, and a blizzard, and I didn't have a coat. And so yes, I could have bought like an Omaha hoodie or something at the airport on the way back out. Like that's I get the idea of having like layered clothing out of necessity, to say, oh, or say, oh, your bag didn't make it, or some weird thing happened where you don't have your luggage. There are some things like that, like some comfort objects. I could see that. And if you're traveling with kiddos, there's certain things that you're like, this is a handy thing to have. But like vet everything. That's what I would do, is like vet everything that's for sale and try to make sure that A, it's useful, and B, that it's priced reasonably. And then have things like, I am very adamant about this, and if I owned the airport, I don't fucking care. This would be like my Costco hot dog like line that I would draw in the sand. Is it drives me absolutely crazy that black coffee is as complicated to get your hands on as every other type of, and I'm a black coffee drinker, so that is like my like blind spot, or my whatever it is. But here's the thing, like it shouldn't be. Black coffee is the simplest, most profitable thing that you can sell. It you don't even Most places will give you a cup. Like they don't even pour it for you. You have to go over there and fill it. And it's like, what I would do is just have coffee be free. If you're going to drink black coffee, there you go. Here's your incentive. Here's a cup. We have all the same size cups. They're all small. It's free coffee. It's decent. It's locally sourced or roasted or whatever, but it's black coffee in a cup, and you don't have to pay for it, and it's right there all the time. And just see how much money we would lose. But I guarantee you, like, people would be like, oh shit, there's going to be coffee at the airport, and I don't have to wait in line for it, and I don't have to, like, if I want food or I want fancy coffee, I can go wait over there and I can get a latte, etc. But if I just want black coffee, and they're like, really? You're not going to have, like, sugar and creamer? And I'm like, no. If you want to drink it black, you can have it for free. If you want anything else, you can go and you can, like, and that would be silly, but it's like ice water, like good filtered ice water to fill your water bottle, and none of this like bottle filling bullshit where the sensor doesn't quite work and it kind of fills a little bit and you're waiting and everybody's standing there like, I want something that fills my water bottle really quick, and you're like, oh, that's good. And the good ice. Fill it with the good ice. Have ice water. Like, how hard would that be? It's an ice machine. Like, let people. So it's like, have like a refreshment station in each terminal, and maybe our airport would be small enough to do that, where you can have a insulated water bottle, be able to refill it, have a free cup of coffee on us, get your travel day started correctly, and I think I mean, some places do this, but like, you should always have default grab and go simple options. And I don't think that needs to be like gas stations have figured this out. Why can't the airport figure this out? Like I can walk into Casey's and I can just go to the hot shelf, you know, the rotisserie, you know what I mean, where they normally have the pizza for lunch or the pizza for breakfast. I can go over there and I can pull a breakfast sandwich out that is reasonably temperatured and I can just go pay for it. And I don't have to order anything. I can just do that. Why we don't employ the exact same thing for airport food, I have no idea. But it's like the amount of lines that like an airport Starbucks has, and in my view the airport Starbucks should operate completely differently. Like they should have a completely different business model for how they set things up. You shouldn't be able to go in and be like, I want this and that and the other, and I have no idea, it's so complicated. I don't know. Like you gotta get your shit together at an airport Starbucks. um for those of us who want a cup of black coffee and I'm behind 20 people who have no idea what the fuck they want, yeah, there's gotta, like, maybe I'll just have Grant's coffee and it's like it's $1. It's $1 for as much black coffee as you can drink while you're in the airport. Here's your cup. Go nuts. Like it's there's no line because it takes all of 5 seconds to fill a black cup of coffee. The end. Like just I would do it out of spite. It's just every piece of my marketing would just be like, this system is fucking broken. And if you think you can go next door and you can pay $12 for an iced vanilla latte, or you could pay $1 for a cup of halfway decent black coffee, and that's it. Yeah, I feel like I could go on and on and on and on about airports because they are so flawed and they take advantage of people. And any place that has the opportunity to take advantage of people also has the opportunity to not do that. Like if you have that kind of control over the environment, you have the control over what's there and what's not. You could also control their experience in a better, a more curated way where people don't have to be frustrated, they don't have to be tired, they don't have to feel like they're being cheated. They can get clear cut information. They, you know, like all of that could be fixed. Especially the goddamn acoustics. Do you know how much I hate the acoustics in every airport? Like it's all tile, it's all glass, it's full of people, it's people walking back and forth, it's overhead announcements that are all muffled, they're blending together. You've got people at different gates who are making complimentary announcements. You've got the boom noises where unattended baggage will be confiscated. Confiscated baggage will be auctioned off periodically. The next confiscated baggage auction will be starting in the lobby in 22 minutes. Like shit like that all the time. There are ways to mitigate noise in spaces like this. There's no reason they have to be the way that they are, but they are. And I guess they're good enough, and they continue to just be limped along. So yeah, now I'm all riled up about airports. Hopefully, if you're flying soon, things go well. Be kind to each other. We'll chat. See you tomorrow.